going to hit record. And you guys can go ahead and click OK.
Okay.
And it is Monday, November 13th, 2023. And this is Susan Creighton. I am here with my colleague, Pat McPherson. And we are both halves of the business Narratus. We have been conducting interviews with various people who have a bit of a story of the Marlboro Morris Ale to tell. And we began a lovely conversation with Tim Radford a couple of weeks ago at his home in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. And this is part 2 of that conversation. We're conducting the second half over Zoom here. So we have more to talk about. Pat, do you want to just briefly introduce yourself so we get your voice on the audio?
This is Pat, and Susan and I are about to talk to Tim Radford.
And let's see, Tim, will you just say your name and where you are right now?
This is Tim Radford, talking to you from Woods Hole, but I'm originally from Hampshire and Oxfordshire in England, and I've been living in the US since 1996 with my wife, Jan Elliott.
Excellent. So, Tim, last time we were talking, I think we got up to about the early 1990s. And the things I have on my list today that I would love to talk to you about are, let's make sure we have time to talk about Kirtlington coming to the ale in 1990 with you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Adderbury coming to the ale in 2005, I think.
Yep.
I'd love to hear about kind of when you relocated to the US and then other ways that you've been at the ale. And we will eventually ask you the same question we asked Jan about how you've seen the ale evolve over the years. And lastly, I'm especially interested in your impressions, having danced on teams in England. And I believe, did you dance with Pinewoods for a while here?
Yes.
So
yes.
You've danced with American Morris teams as well, to just think about what the differences are. So let's go chronologically. Let's go back to about 1990, and Kirtlington is coming to the ale for the first time. And can you tell us about what that was like?
Okay, well, the reasons that Kirtlington came to the Morris Ale was Rhett Krause. Rhett Krause danced with Kirtlington Morris in 93 when he was finishing up his doctoral work before he became a doctor.
Tim?
Yeah.
Possible date correction. If Kirtlington came in 1990, maybe Rhett's
82.
It's probably early 80s.
Rhett was here in 82, and we became friends, and we corresponded, and he kept on badgering us about coming to the Marlboro Morris Ale, Kirtlington, as a team. And we eventually did so in 1990. I think we had 2 sets. There were at least 12 dancers and 3 musicians, plus some hangers-on. So we came in 1990. We flew Air Q8, which was quite interesting. It was the cheapest flight we got. And the funny thing about it, it was a dry flight. And I remember a couple of my friends who came who didn't like the idea of it being a dry flight, so bought vodka at the airport and filled lemonade bottles up with vodka so they could drink vodka on the flight as we came over. I was not part of that. I sat at the back with my friend Tim Lawton, and we smoked cigarettes. It was a time when you could smoke on a flight, and at that time I was a smoker. I will say that at the time when Kirtlington came in 1990, as I said, there were at least 2 sets of teams, 2 sets of dancers, 12 dancers in total, plus musicians. At least 4 of us also danced with Adderbury. So there was been a very good, strong connection between Adderbury and Kirtlington right from the very beginning. To go back to reiterate again, I started teaching Kirtlington in 1979, but left the team, didn't come back as a dancer until 1986 at the request of Ian Harris, who was the foreman at that time. Anyway, we came to New York. Flew into New York. We stayed with several families in the New York area. I stayed with Paul Friedman in his brownstone in Brooklyn. And I remember we stayed up the first night until 3 o'clock in the morning talking, while some of my friends went off to try and find beer. We finally got to bed. We got up the following day and went sightseeing around New York. I did all the things that teens do when they come to New York, go to Adderbury Park and go up and down Broadway and go through all the neighborhoods. Remember, we came to a point where we wanted to drink, and we turned a corner. There was an Irish bar, and 6 of us went into this Irish bar. And it wasn't until we were in there drinking weird beers like Michelob. We'd never had American beers before and didn't know anything about them. We noticed all the signs up around the bar that said, support the IRA here, and things like that, and felt suddenly very uncomfortable. But we were tolerated there. I think we had several jugs of beer and food and went off and ended up in some other part of New York before all meeting up at Paul's house, changing, getting on the subway to go and dance with who was it we danced with in New York? It must have been the women's team. Yeah.
Ring a bells?
I don't think ring a bells. I think we don't. We didn't dance with Barry at the point in time. No. Anyway, we danced with Ring of Bells. And we ended up on Brooklyn Heights dancing. Ended up in a bar, which was peopled with lawyers, and we had an amazing time. Ended up getting back to our digs at some ridiculous time of night, and the following day, I personally and the people I was staying with at Paul's had to make our way to New Jersey to get our van. I think we had 4 vans in total, but our van happened to be in New Jersey at Dennis and what's Dennis's wife's name? Jan? Yeah, Jan Burdick and Dennis. Anyway, we finally got there. I remember an experience of we were told to go down to New York and find the Path Railway. So we were walking around trying to find the Path Railway, which took us from Manhattan into New Jersey. And I asked person, I said to one person, I said, excuse me, can you, in my best English, turn and said, could you tell me where the Path Railway is, please? And this guy went, what? Can you tell me where the Path Railway? You mean the path? So he gave us directions and we got on the Path Railway and we ended up in Hoboken, which is where Jan and Dennis lived. And we got our vans and we drove through New York out to what I guess was 95 to New Haven. And that was the first time we really saw the ocean at New Haven. And then we struck north to get to Brattleboro. And we got to Brattleboro, and it was when the old $3 Dewey's was still open. Not McNeil's as it became, but when McNeil had his old bar. And we met up with several people there. I had not met anybody before. The only person we really knew, and he was not there, was Rhett. I don't think Rhett was around at that time when we got to Brattleboro. Anyway, we found $3 Dewey's and we started drinking, and people came. Paul Eric Smith was one of the first people I met, and I guess Andy and a couple of the other women as well. I don't remember the detail in that detail. But then they said, "Well, shall we dance outside?" I said, "Well, we got to change." So we all went down to the parking lot where our vans were at the co-op and stripped off and put our Morris kit on in the middle of the street, which was we didn't mind. I don't think anybody else minded, but that's what we did. Then we walked up to $3 Dewey's and we danced outside. And Tim Lawton, my good friend, who's a A lovely story about Tim Lawton was he was a farmer in Tackley in Oxfordshire, and one of the things you had to fill out the visa waiver when you came to the States at that time. And one of the questions on there, have you been to a farm lately? And he wrote his name and address on there, Tim Lawton, Tackley, Wood Farm, Tackley, Oxfordshire. Have you been on a farm lately? No. So anyway, Tim Lawton and I were billeted with Ginny Milky in her wonderful, I call it bungalow. I don't know what you call it, ranch, I guess, in the middle of the woods, in Brattleboro, or actually West Brattleboro. Actually, she lives, doesn't she? I think. Anyway, and we had a wonderful evening there, and got up the following morning, and we saw the most incredible birds I'd ever seen in my life. Singing Azure Bunting for the first time was mind blowing. A cardinal was bright enough, but it was just never seen birds like it. Anyway, we had a great breakfast, and then we went via some bakery shop to buy loads of bagels or something.
So Tim, let me fast forward you a little bit here. So everybody gathers. Let's see. So everybody's gathering up at this place called Marlboro College, which, if you've never been there before, it feels like it's way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm assuming everybody kind of found their way up there one way or another.
Well, we all went, whoever we were billeted with in Brattleboro got to the college the following day. We went up with Ginny. We didn't have our van.
Yeah.
We went up with Ginny to the college, as I said, after we got, I'm sure it was a load of bagels or something. We went, and then we got to the college. I don't know what time we got there at all. But then we started meeting people, and we were assigned our accommodation at Marlborough, and that was on the Friday night.
Okay, so you were there for Friday night. Okay,
we were there for the Friday night, and we were in halfway. I was anyway, up in one of the top back rooms in halfway, and I think there were five of us in the dorm room that I was in with a couple of the other guys. And then we met people on the Friday night, and as people came, and as I said, the only person I really knew before that was Rhett. I knew of Tony because
had you not met yet?
We had not met. We knew each other because we both had written articles for Morris Matters, and we both had friends. Well, I had friends who'd been to Marlborough before. That was one of the things I was writing down. I was very good friends with Windsor, and I've been friends with Windsor since '75. So, and they enjoyed Marlborough so much, they told everybody what a wonderful thing it was. And then many of my friends who I knew in England, when we found out that we were coming, that Kirtlington was coming to Marlborough, put in their orders for T-shirts. They all wanted T-shirts. So I don't know how many I purchased and brought back, but it was quite a few. So we had this connection of the English teams who'd come to Marlborough before and talked about it, and we were excited to have that. And then the excitement of actually meeting people when we got there. So I don't really remember how it happened on the Friday. Oh, I do remember what happened on Friday night. It was a very important day for me. We all started dancing in the music shed, which I loved. And the music shed, I really enjoyed it. It was empty. There were no chairs or anything in there. There was just the big stage at the end of the concrete floor. I remember it was a concrete floor, which was a bit of a disappointment. Because even in our practices, we used to practice in the old village hall in Kirtlington, and it was a sprung floor. That had to be demolished because it sprung too much. But that's another story. So we all met, and different people started dancing, and I got to try not to get emotional now. This bunch of women got up and danced. And there was this woman at the end, and I turned around and I said, "Who is that?" And you know what it was? It was Halfpenny and Jan dancing at the back, and they were doing Oddington, and she was fabulous.
Mm. Oh, good.
So
I wanted to hear the story of how you guys met, so I'm glad this is making its way in there. She caught your
that's
eye right from the get-go.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
And then I want
Yes.
to hear Tim finish what
Hey.
he was saying. Halfpenny were not invited to the ale that year. We happened to have six to get up just a dance for fun in the music
Right.
shed, and it was a strong six, and the dance went really well. And if I'm not mistaken, someone named Doug Creighton was playing for us.
I would not be surprised. And so were
And
you guys all there with other teams or
yeah,
were
we were there with other teams or as guests or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, we were very disappointed not to be there as a team because it was such a strong group.
Oh, yeah.
But we got to dance on the Friday, and we were very happy about that. And Doug's music was great, and so we were really leaping. We were really soaring. And I should probably add, from my point of view, I was going to embark on this master's thesis about music and dance in Morris, and one of the people I wanted to interview was Tim Radford. So I had
You were waiting
noticed
to figure out who he was.
his,
we
his
had
presence. I had met him.
Oh, you had
we had met at Sidmouth in 86 when I did the Duns Chew workshop at Sidmouth, and we'd also met in 97. She came to part of the workshops, but
87.
didn't really come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
87.
Yeah. So So
we had friends in common in England, and we'd sat together at pubs, but not really had any conversations. But
Okay.
I recognized him. He didn't know who I was.
Well, I didn't.
Context.
Yeah. I do have a wonderful picture of the back of her head at the 88 Sidmouth. It was 88 Sidmouth ritual dance competition when Duns Chew took part, and Jan was sitting in front of me, and I took a picture of Duns Chew dancing on the stage and Jan's back of Jan's head. I've still got that photo somewhere, but I'm unaware. Yeah, so that night we talked, and she said that she was going to be dancing with Thames Valley the next day. Of which,
that was that year.
It turned out I hardly saw any of her that day because she didn't dance with Thames because they would let her.
Right.
So that was the year. So we at that time, the dancing. That's right. The first dancing is obviously the show dances at the college, and everybody got up and danced. And we were last to get up and dance, and we picked 6 strong dancers, and we got up and did trunkles, which is our sort of signature dance. Kirtlington, only 1.5 dancers were actually collected in Kirtlington. Trunkles and the description of another dance, just saying it was a half-hay side step half-hay dance. All the other dances were created since 79.
I think there was a stick dance too.
No, stick dances didn't exist. When I first taught the team, it was only a handkerchief tradition. It was no sticks. When I left and came back to the team, Ian Harris had introduced 3 stick dances. Anyway,
but I'm wrong.
Anyway, no, you're wrong. So we danced at the show, and we did trunkles, and we did the dance, and just as we did, and you can look at the video, just as we did the famous Kirtlington hay, which everyone says, "Hey, on earth do you do that?" Just as we do the hay, the sun comes out. It's quite amazing.
Wow.
We recognized it, and other people did. It was quite amazing. And we danced trunkles and came off, then had lunch. Then we all went into Brattleboro, and we danced at the different spots in Brattleboro.
Right. So what was the team's impression of the event? What was the team's impression of this whole event? How was this different to dances you would do in England?
It was unusual in the sense that those sorts of events didn't happen that much in England. But in saying that, the Kirtlington Lamb Ale had been going on for 10 years at that time. So the first Kirtlington revived Lamb Ale was 1980. So that worked on a similar principle: procession to the church service, procession from the church, dancing in the schoolyard, and then different other places around town. So that did exist already in Kirtlington, but it didn't exist very many other places at that time. There weren't ales. There were
there was a church service in there?
Yes, there was a church service.
Oh,
and there is every year as well. And somebody dances a jig in the church aisle.
Okay. Do you know, is it unique to Kirtlington, or are there
that particular part? No, because they do it at Saxton as well for the. Now I'll say there aren't ales. There are Morris Ring Ales, which happen every year, and they've been going on since 1934 was the first Morris Ale. But I've never been to a Ring Morris Ale, because I've never been a member of a Ring Morris team, and I've never been a fan of the Ring Morris team. They were anti-women, and I always believed that if a woman could dance just as well as a man, why shouldn't she dance? And so Roy and I always believed that if you wanted women to dance, you had to teach them properly, to learn how to dance properly. And I wish some men's teams would know that sometimes, but that's my bias. So,
quick insertion.
Yeah.
Penny really struggled when it first got going, because we had difficulty finding a male teacher, and I think Muddy River had that problem too. But we found one. Shag.
Yeah, and that was true of English female teams. They had problems getting good teachers to begin with. The Windsors of the world were lucky. Roy was always on their side, and I was always on their side, and I gave them stick workshops and stuff like that. And I said I'd known them since 1975. So and some of the other female teams. But anyway, to come back to, so we were used to that sort of Marlboro existence because it happened at Kirtlington, where you had a mix of different teams.
Yeah.
So we were used to that. We weren't used to the feast and some of the coach trips and something like that. In the same sense, it wasn't the same. But that was at the time when we were there. The feast was on the Saturday.
Right. Okay.
So it was different in that respect. So after you danced in Marlboro, you came back and there was the feast and shenanigans and everything going on. That's when Jan and I really got together, was at Saturday night. And then the Sunday after the Sunday, there was a workshop run by Ian Harris of Kirtlington, and he was drunk as a skunk the night before, and he ran the workshop. And I don't know how he managed to do it, but that was in the dining hall. And then we all piled into cars and went off to tour around Windham County.
Mm-hmm.
Now I sent you my notes of some of the things, and I'll reiterate here one of the weird experiences of dancing at Saxton's River.
Yeah, do tell us what was that like?
So we got to Saxton's River, and we're going to dance in front of the church at the fork, because I believe there's a fork in the road. The church is in the middle, and the main road goes sort of back behind you. So I don't know who danced first. Someone got up and danced, and Kirtlington were going to get up and dance. And as I stood up to get up to the dance, I swallowed a fly. I didn't think anything much of it at the time. I just went, oh, that's horrible. What's that? So I got up to the dance, and I'm standing in position number 3, which was tended to be my position, because at this time I was not really leading the team. I didn't like to take up the top 2 positions. I used to dance either at number 6 or number 3. I mean, didn't mean I couldn't dance anywhere else, but that was my preferred position. So I stood up at number 3, and I'm standing there, and suddenly I feel this weird sensation in my sinus cavity. And it was the fly.
Oh,
So I thought, oh, come on, oh, wow. And I couldn't take it. So I said, take my place. I have a problem. I got a fly at my nose. They looked at me as I was crazy. And I went in and I blew my nose, nothing happened. And it was and I was starting to worry. What is it? Is it a horsefly? Is it going to sting me in the nose or something? So I blew harder and harder, and I blew hard, and the fly flew out and flew off.
I'm sure glad you got out of the set, because how would you have danced with that kind of
I
distraction?
don't know. I got up and danced the next day. I danced the next dance, and I danced the rest of the day as well.
That is wild.
When I said we were in different cars, I remember I was with Rhett that day in his car. It was just me and Rhett in his car driving around different places. We danced at Saxon's River, and can I remember what the other place was? One of the more picturesque places, but I don't remember. Then we ended up in Newfane.
Okay.
And then
did you have much of an audience in either place?
I don't remember very many people at any of the places I ever danced in Wyndham County, and that's true of every time I've danced anywhere in Wyndham County, which is another point I will make later.
Except Brattleboro.
Except Brattleboro. But even then, when you dance on a Saturday at Brattleboro, you don't get huge crowds watching you. And I've been
in show dance.
Yeah, except for the show dance in Elliott Street. I can remember dancing on red hot tarmac in blazing sun in Brattleboro, outside the banks and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it was, I don't want to say purgatory, but it was close to it. But then that's a weird thing. There are teams in England who dance at shopping centres and stuff like that. It was not something we ever liked to do with the teams I was with. We danced outside nice country pubs or in beautiful places. We didn't dance in grey town centres and stuff like that. Not to say we didn't do it when we were on tours. I remember dancing with Windsor in Staines. Staines is now changed its name. It's now called Staines on the Water, I believe, or Staines on Thames. But the town centre is this one horrible grey concrete area. And John Betjeman, the famous poet, wrote a poem which basically said, I wish the planes would come. I'm paraphrased. I wish the planes would come and bomb Staines because it's not good for anything now. Anyway, that's by the by. So we didn't enjoy dancing in Brattleboro very much. It was nice seeing people and talking with people and meeting people, but we didn't really like dancing there. It was much better dancing at the college and better dancing in the more picturesque Wyndham counties. Now, in my experience of dancing at Marlboro, and as you said, I've been there with an English team twice. I was there with Adderbury, which was a totally different experience for me because my son was with me.
Oh, on the team as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
My son is one of the greatest dancers I've never known. He's a beautiful dancer.
I bet. Is he still dancing now?
When he can. But he's very busy with his work at the moment. So, but he started dancing when he was 8 years old.
Oh gosh!
And when he was 10, we danced at Bampton, and he was in the middle of the set, and someone hit him on the finger in a stick dance, and his finger was bleeding like anything. And he finished the dance, and he walked off, and he cried his eyes out.
Oh!
And he didn't dance for about a year after that.
I bet he remembers that really clearly.
Yeah. But he came back and he does dance and he loves it. He really does like it. And we're trying to persuade him to bring my grandson to practice. In fact, he took my grandson to the Adderbury AGM last week. And they said it was very boring.
How old is your grandson now?
11.
Oh, okay.
So Mikey started dancing when he was 8, and I taught him to caper. Well, I taught him to dance. I taught him to caper, and I said, when you caper, kick your backside with your heel when you do it. Even to this day, he does it, and even to this day, he gets dark patches on the back of his backside where his shoes hit his backside. So, but he's a very, very good dancer. He's won the solo jig competition at Sidmouth at least twice, the double jig at Sidmouth, once the single jig with his sister playing concertina for him, and he's won the double jig competition at least twice with Laurel Swift.
Oh my!
Who we've known Laurel since she was 8 or 9 from Sidmouth. Because we went to Sidmouth. My kids have been to Sidmouth every year of their life except one, when I made them come to Marlborough. When I made them come to Pinewoods. And I get reminded about it every year. Even in utero, they've been every year when they're in utero as well.
Wow.
And so of their kids as well. So they've been steeped in the Morris. They've been steeped in the Morris because of being around me. Their mother played for the team. They've been around the Morris all their lives. They're both dancers. My daughter's a great dancer. She's a great musician. She plays for Great Western as well. So having my son at Marlborough was a very special thing for me. And although the guys were in vans, I was in my car, and we drove everywhere when we could in the vans with the guys. Yeah. And we came to Marlborough. Mikey had just met his future wife and couldn't talk to her because there was no telephone what do you call it, reception at Marlborough. Yeah, and when he finally got in touch with her, she got very cross and thought that he'd abandoned her. She was in England, of course.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's, by the by, now that they're separated, they've got 2 kids, but they're separated. So it's weird, but they were. But it was a great experience, and we ended up in Rochester, New York, and in Niagara Falls, and a couple of other places. Syracuse. I've got to say it right. I always say it wrong.
Syracuse, yeah.
Syracuse. So, and then we came back and we danced with Pinewoods before they got on the plane and went home. Okay. But that was a very interesting experience. Not that much different from Kirtlington, because we had to go through the same sort of thing. The only difference was the feast was on a Sunday, which I prefer. We had coaches to the events on the Sunday, which I prefer. Mm-hmm. I got a little bit cross last year when we had to drive miles and miles and miles in our own cars. I prefer, but what LDL can do to improve that, I think would be great. But there it is.
But whatever the ale did to make Marlborough happen is very much appreciated.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is I've had too many experiences in the past going to Marlborough and going out on the coach trips. I remember one particular trip going all the way to Jamaica. I don't know how many miles that is from the college. Going all the way to Jamaica, it took us ages to get there. And when we got there, the place we were supposed to be dancing at had been burnt down.
Oh my!
There was no one there. There was nowhere to dance because the parking lot had been torn up and it was just rubble.
Oh my goodness!
And it was a total and absolute waste of time. I've been on experiences before where we've got places and there's been no one to watch us, no one at all, which is disappointing. It's disappointing. I know that we all dance for each other at the college, and it's very much dancing for your peers when you're dancing at the college, but it's nice to dance in front of people. That's what makes Elliott Street and Newfane such a nice experience of being there. And I know from my point of view, the one thing I always love about Newfane is having the experience of watching TVI, who I absolutely adore, learning to dance all week and on the Sunday at Newfane, dancing their socks off in front of everybody.
Yeah.
That's an experience I always look forward to. I tried to dance. TVI. I had a difficulty at the beginning because both Kirtlington and Adderbury are right foot leads, and when you dance TVI, it's an outside foot lead, and it takes a lot of getting used to again after dancing right foot lead.
Yeah,
a lot of unlearning. It took me ages to get used to it. I did in the end, and then I just, my legs wouldn't do it anymore, and I couldn't dance anymore. So I only danced on about 3 tours with TVI.
Okay.
Although I wanted to. I used to embarrass Hanford by saying that, as far as I was concerned, Thames Valley International were the closest thing to a village team I'd ever known. Because they're all great friends. Everybody gets on superbly. We do one tradition. We talk and work on style and performance, and everybody gets on. And it's just a pleasure to be involved with them. Even as now an outsider, I know my wife dances with them, but I love going along to practices because they're all just great friends.
Jan.
It's interesting you say that they're as close as we can get to a village team, because they started in a small city, and they are totally spread out. None of them live in the same place.
Right.
So just an interesting comparison.
And at least
but everybody,
they all nominally from at least Canada, and now not that's true.
Well, that was true at one point, and that's when it became. I mean, when it first was, it was Thames Valley Morris, and Thames Valley International came later when Jan and some of the other people. Yeah, was it 90? Was the first time it was called international? Yes. I mean, that was the interesting about the first time.
90 and 91 after going to England.
Yeah, the first time I saw Thames Valley International, Hanford was not there. He couldn't be at Marlboro in 1990, and so Alistair and Peter Redgate were the musicians.
Oh,
Alistair Brown.
Yeah, Redgate.
Alistair Brown.
Alistair Brown. Yeah, and Peter Redgate were the musicians for that first year. But we got on so well. I mean, how can you not get on with Ian Robb?
True.
Tim's hero.
And the other ones, you know, and that hour with Kirtlington was just remarkable, because we actually stayed an extra night. We stayed to the Monday, and on the Sunday we took out the Marlboro women. We took them out to dinner to a steakhouse. And there's a story about that as well. Is that we wanted to find a pub, but it was Memorial Day Sunday. There was nothing open. So Bill McAllister said, "There's a bar at the bowling alley." And we all went to the Brattleboro bowling alley. And it was practically empty except for all of us, all of Kirtlington, all of Marlborough who get there. And it was Bill McAllister's idea to do that. And the one thing I remember most of all about it is where I learned that we have a thing in England. You go to the bar and you buy everybody a drink, and you go back to the table with the drinks. You can't do that all at a time. You couldn't do that in Vermont. It was against the law. You could only buy one drink at a time at a bar, or at that time at the bar in Vermont. It's against the law to buy more, to buy a round of drinks. One person to buy a round of drinks and take him to a. Anyway, we got by that. We were drinking there and we were bowling, and the manager was so pleased with our what was happening and enjoyed it so much. He all gave us a T-shirt, and it was a bright orange T-shirt with, I think, green letters, Brattleboro Brawl written on it. But we had a wonderful time. And Bill McAllister and I talk about that often. And Bill is a good friend, and was a great supporter of the team over those early years. And you know, he was someone I really got on with that first year at Marlborough. Wow. And so we stayed we stayed Sunday night and we didn't leave. Did we go straight back to New York? Yeah, I think we went straight back to New York from Brattleboro, from Marlboro in our vans back down to New York, and we didn't dance again. But we had a well of a time, and we made, I've made lifelong friendships.
Mm.
I mean, I think about the L. I think about Andy and all the women that I know so well, and some of the men on the team, and they're lifelong friends now.
Right.
And we love seeing each other. As a totally aside to that, Fred Brunig, who was a great guy, when Roger Cartwright took the first American touring Morris team to England, they were called the Pinewoods New Englanders.
Mm.
Two of the people that danced on that team. When I became friends with Roger, two of the people on that team were John Dexter and Fred Brunig.
Yes.
And I danced with them in 1976.
Oh, good heavens. Wow.
So Fred and I immediately hit it off again when we saw each other again and talked and stuff like that. I remember the things from the past. So I had those connections with Marlboro. I had those connections with Tony. And I've told you the story about talking to Tony for the first time at the college on that Saturday. And Tony was frantically trying to keep people out of the way of the camera, and we were talking and everything. And I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm doing a paper at the conference that Tess Buckland's running in Crewe." And he said, "So am I." I said, "Oh, yeah." And Tony said, "Great, all us self-opinionated bastards together." Remember that.
Wow.
And that was when I first met Tony to talk to.
Yeah.
I have to say now, I'll get this out of the way now. I'd never found Tony easy to talk to. Roy Diamond and I, when we got together, we just talked for hours about all sorts of things, mainly obviously about Morris and Morris traditions. I tried to talk to Tony, and he would say one thing and almost shut you down and didn't want to hear your view. I always had great problems really trying to be his equal. And I found that disappointing.
Yeah.
But he did great things, and I had great respect for Tony. It's just that on a personal level, I had problems.
It wasn't a conversation, it sounds like.
It wasn't a conversation. It was a one-way.
Yeah.
It was a one-way street.
Yeah.
And okay, that's the man. That's the way he was.
Right. So, Tim, let me. One piece of the timeline here that's not so clear to me is, at what point did you relocate to the U.S. and how did you connect up with American Morris teams once you got over on this side of the Atlantic?
Well, I still kept friends with people, and we came, I think, at least twice to Marlborough before we moved here.
Okay.
As sort of guests of TDI or something. And I at one time we were guests of Tony, and we stayed at Tony's house. We didn't see much of him, but we remember staying there. And I can't remember if that was before we moved here or whether it was after we moved here. But as soon as we got here, obviously with Jan being a keen Morris dancer and me being a very keen Morris dancer, and I was still fit enough to dance and teach at that time, we wanted to start something locally. That's when we started Woods Hole Village Morris, which was morphed into, the people that were on that morphed into Vineyard Swordfish.
Okay. Yep.
And when I gave up dancing, but we were Woods Hole Village Morris, and I taught team here. We never danced at Marlborough, but we danced in other places.
Yeah. And
we still kept friendships with all our teams. And I also danced with Pinewoods Morris Men. So as soon as I came here, I started dancing with Pinewoods. So therefore I came to Marlborough with Pinewoods. And of course I was friends with Thames Valley International. So we either came to Marlborough as, if I didn't come there as a dancer with Pinewoods, I came as a guest of Halfpenny Morris or Thames Valley International or vineyard swordfish. I've got a list here of things. Things.
Can I make
Yeah.
a
So,
small correction, please?
what's that?
You said the people on Woods Hole Village Morris morphed into vineyard swordfish,
Some of
but
them.
vineyard
Some of them.
swordfish was already alive and around on the vineyard. I can't remember if I had joined at that point, but they even toured with us. Do you remember, Tim? Around Falmouth?
Yeah.
With us.
And vineyard
So they were a
swordfish at
vineyard
that time. Vineyard swordfish at that time were almost exclusively, except Jan and Ron, Islanders.
Islander. And Ron hadn't joined at that point.
Ron, he was a musician. He used to go back and forth with you.
Yeah, but that was
He used to
after
go back
that
and forth
tour with them.
But
after
so Ron,
Woods Hole Village
so
was.
Jan joined as a dancer and was taking the ferry to the vineyard for practices, and then Ron joined her as a musician, and then more and more people from the mainland joined, and less people on the vineyard were members. It ended up with only Kansas being a vineyarder.
Oh,
Yes. Thank you.
And it became a mainland team then. Anyway, that's by the by. So we've been going to Morris. So we moved there in '96. I think by '96, we didn't get here until Halloween. We moved on Halloween '96. Is that no 97? Because we got married '96. We came Halloween '97.
96.
Yeah.
96.
Yeah, we came 90, we came and so we were at at 98 at Marlboro. I don't know who with, but we were there. And I think we only missed, and since then I think I've only missed one or maybe two L's at the most.
Wow. So you've been there watching the ale happen, participating in it in different ways for many, many years. And you've talked about how some of the logistics changed from the feast being on Saturday to the feast being on Sunday, and buses are not buses. But I'm curious how you've seen the ale evolve over time.
Well, can I add
ways?
Can I add a little bit to that? Because
absolutely,
as I said, I knew a bit about the ale because of being friends with Windsor and Windsor telling us about it. I also had a peripheral interest in knowledge of Jorrocks, although I never liked their dancing, but that's another story. Jorrocks came the year before Kirtlington came. Okay. But when Kirtlington were there, 3 Jorrocks were there as well.
Oh, okay.
Dancing jigs.
Okay.
So it was Tim Bull playing for Andrew and Rob.
Okay.
That's right. Anyway, but not only was I going there as a dancer and as a watcher, I was also there as friends of teams in England who came, because I wrote down in here, I'm great friends with Great Western and have been for ages. My daughter plays for them. Right. Her partner is an ex Great Western squire. Windsor, the Bedlams, Kirtlington, Adderbury, Ensham, outside capering crew. I did know a couple of people on Westminster, but they're one of the English teams that I didn't know that well. Yeah. Have Hammersmith been? I don't think they have they? Seven Champions have never been either.
I don't.
I mean, all these teams. Lizzie Dripping. I knew Mike Barraclough, who really started Lizzie Dripping, although I hated Lizzie Dripping's dancing, but that's another story. So I've known people that have been going to the Ale for years and years, and teams that have visited the Ale from England for years. And I also know Toronto Morris Men. I know Thames Valley International. I know people from Philadelphia and all sorts of people. So because I've immersed myself in Morris for so many years, Marlborough has been one of those things that I've always wanted to be at and take part in. And although things have changed logistically, not that they haven't changed that much. It's a bit, it's a bit like the Adderbury Day of Dance. I've been doing the Adderbury Day of Dance now since 1975. Ask me about any particular year, and I might remember an event, but don't ask me what bloody year it was, because they all meld into the same. They're all the same. Mm-hmm. Unless we make some huge difference, like remember Adderbury Day of Dance one year, that when Windsor came and it snowed in April.
Yeah,
You know,
that's for
so you remember things like that. Let's just look at Marlborough. I remember the year being there where we danced about 80 degrees on the Saturday, and on the Sunday it dropped to below 30 and snowed on the Sunday night.
Yeah,
We
Don't
had a
ask me what year that
in our
was.
dorm that night.
Yeah. Now the other thing about Marlborough, which has been a vast interest in me, is I'm a singer too. And that very first year, that's when I met Ian Robb and Alistair Brown and some of the singers who came to the Ale, and we hit it off immediately. And so every year, as much as watching the dancing, I miss being in Rosie's pub, absolutely crammed with people singing.
right.
So that's just as important part of the Ale to me as the dancing, because I've been a singer all my life, longer than I've been a Morris dancer.
Right.
And now, since no longer I can't dance any longer, then I have to really fill my jollies up by singing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm getting forgetful. I don't remember half of them anymore, but that's another story. I don't forget the Morris dances. I can still teach a Morris dance. I don't forget those. But so Marlborough is this amazing conglomeration of all my best Morris pals and all my best singing pals. So the interesting thing about it is that singing goes on. Tony never had anything to do with it.
Interesting, huh?
Tony was never in the
This
pub.
aside
to
here,
sing.
Tim, you are making me think that we have the 50th Ale coming up, not this coming year, but the following year.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think we should do as archivists at the 50th Ale is record a singing session.
Oh well,
And
yeah.
People bring your favorite songs and we record the singing session. Because you're right.
I mean,
I'm not focused
just-
on the singing aspect of the
Right.
ale, thinking so much about the dancing.
Yeah. Now, another person I will add that I was great friends with, and I can't remember. I'm sure he did come to the Ale. Tom Cease was my great friend, and he was a great singer as well. Tom and I got on really well. He was a lovely man. Of course, I knew him and his team, and I taught his team. So
Came to the Ale way back in the late 70s.
Yeah.
With Forest City.
Yeah.
Forest City.
I can't remember if he was here.
I think
He must have been there with
were invited, and then they came much later, revamped and revitalized as
with the
young woman.
Yeah. Of course, I knew all of them, and of course, I'll tell you another little thing, which is a connection with Marlborough and with England and me. I had a very, very good friend who lived in Adderbury, who took a film of the first day of dance in Adderbury, and he was a lawyer who worked in London. He used to take the train every day from Adderbury. Not from Adderbury, he used to go to Banbury, obviously, to take the train to London and back and forth. And he was a good friend, and he was a regular at the Bell, like we all were. And he took a film of the first day of dancing. Well, he moved from Adderbury, much to our chagrin, but still commuted to London from Goatland.
Goatland, which is way up in.
And his best friend, and his best friend in Goatland was Keith Thompson, who was the leader of Goatland Sword.
Goatland Plowstots.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Well, when they came to Marlborough, I couldn't be there because I was in hospital with sepsis.
Oh no.
So I didn't get to see them.
Oh.
However, I was well enough on the Monday following Marlborough to go to a party that they threw for Goatland in Boston. In Boston, wherever it was. And I was able to talk to Keith about my friend. And we hit it off immediately. The connection between Goatland and Adderbury and me and Marlborough. And they enjoyed it. And then they decided to make a presentation to their gentleman, the guy that carries the banner and wears a top hat. And when he came out of the crowd, I said, I know that man. And it was Bob West, who is the cake bearer for Bampton Morris.
Oh my!
And Bob and I since then have become very keen correspondents.
Wow!
Because not only do we have our memories of Morris in Oxfordshire, we have our memories of Marlborough. We are both Hampshiremen. He was born just outside Romsey, and I was born a few miles away. And we both have reminiscences of Hampshire as young men and children.
Wow.
So Marlborough, Bob, England, and Marlborough made it all happen.
You know,
I wouldn't have seen him again without Marlborough. I wouldn't have seen him again.
Yeah. Both your interviews together, for me, are bringing out this broader message of Marlborough being a place where the community solidifies its ties to each other.
It's about people.
For your young people coming in and saying, oh, we've just been doing this thing, and now all of a sudden we're realizing there's all these other people that do it, and we're getting some context for it. And Tim, yours blows it up even wider, saying we go beyond just being this little regional New England community to other parts of the US and these US, UK connections, and it becomes a much broader community, and the ties are just as strong.
Yeah, I'm really good friends with Mike Higgins and Janet May from Berkshire Bedlams. We corresponded with each other all the time, and so do I with some of the other guys on Bedlams. They're great guys. I've known John Kirkpatrick for years, but we've never really been friends as such. We're sort of unaware of each other and know each other, and have been involved with our Morris team since '75. And just so happens to be it's Adderbury's 50th year.
Oh,
the same year is Marlborough. We're going to be celebrating 50 years the month before you celebrate 50 years at Marlborough.
That's amazing.
They're talking about putting a stained glass window in the church.
That would be
that's not certain yet, but that's one of the things they're talking about. But anyway, that's well.
Would you go over there for that?
I think
I'll go every year.
When you said Mike Higgins and Janet, you said Berkshire Bedlam, but it's Shropshire.
Shropshire Bedlams. Shropshire Bedlams.
Okay.
But then I'm also good friends with everybody on Berkshire Bedlams as well. So
I believe they're coming in 2024.
Well, the last I heard, both Berkshire Bedlams and Windsor are going to come to the Ale next year.
Yeah, this coming year.
That's what I've heard. So
that will be great. That will be great.
Yeah. So my the four most important places to me for Morris is Adderbury. And I used to have Adderbury and Kirtlington. I used to have a saying is, I love Kirtlington, but my passion is Adderbury. And that's still true. Marlborough and Woods Hole.
Those are your places.
They're my places.
That is a lovely.
And in saying that, also South Hampshire, but that's because of singing. But that's another story.
Right.
But that's where I first started. That's where I first started Morris in South Hampshire. So therefore, I have to take that into account as well.
That's another place. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I've been in.
Do you have to close it up now, ladies?
Yeah, I think we should. I don't think I've got anything else written down other than the list of the teams that I've sort of been around and their association with Marlborough, and all my friends. I think we started this talking right from the very beginning about when I think one of the first things I said, Morris is about friendship. It's about being
Yes, it
together.
is.
And the strongest thing for Morris is the fact of not you acting as one or six individuals. You act as one team dancing together for one purpose. Well, the Morris is that in spades.
Creating a thing together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
They-
have a
they're
story
coming
that
together.
I forgot to tell. I'm not sure how to deal with it. I can
Go for it.
write it to you. I can tell it to you in a few minutes right now.
Tell it to us.
Okay, it's about Tim kept mentioning the feast and how the feast was first on the Saturday, and later it moved to the Sunday, which he much preferred. Very early on, I was a guest of Newtown Morris, and it was a rainy Marlboro weekend, I remember, and they were all going off to the feast after dancing on the Saturday, and I learned that you could not go to the feast unless you were a member, a dancing or playing member of a team, and that you had to wear kit. Your kit was your ticket to the feast. I sort of learned that on the spot. And as a guest, I did not have a kit. I mean, I had one, but I didn't have it with me. Um, and so I knew I couldn't go, and I wished them all well. And I sat in Bruce Pratt's old VW van, and I recall eating peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I felt very sorry for myself.
I should
And
think.
I found out later that some people who were in the know did go to the feast, and they were not in kit. So that was just like, twisting the knife. That I
Teach you
believe
to follow the
contributed.
rules.
Exactly. But if you knew the right people, you could bend them. But I believe that was part of the origin or the reason for the Newtown Alternative Feast. And I assume you've talked to people about that.
Yes, several
I
people.
just remember sitting in that van, and then I think it was the next year that Newtown had a feast in the music shed.
Yes.
And
We talked to Mark Wilkie. When we
amazing.
talked to Mark Wilkie,
And
Perfect.
he
Diamond.
thought that, they thought it was wrong.
Mhm.
And that's when they started their alternative feast.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't the only one excluded, but I was one of those.
Yeah.
excluded.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Can I also relate something else about the feast?
Yes.
Is that when I was first aware of the English teams that I knew were there, and when it came to the feast, they didn't know that that it was a good practice to go in there and grab space for your team.
Oh.
And some people don't do that.
And
They
some
do
people
it
don't do
so
that, but some people do. And I
Yeah.
know that there was one English team that they couldn't find anywhere to sit together.
I
Because
think
there was, and I told them, and every year after that, that if there was an English team there or a team who'd never been there before, I told them, get in there and grab space. If you want to sit together for the feast, get in there and grab space for yourselves, because
if you want to
nobody
sit
else is going to do it for you.
Mm.
And it
I
can
think
be.
it was Goatland who couldn't find a.
Well,
who
I
couldn't
wasn't
find
there.
space,
I
so they
wasn't.
must have just
I
told
wasn't
you
there.
that.
I wasn't there that year.
I know.
I couldn't be there. So yeah.
Just
So that was a
like-
huge disappointment to me. Was a Goatland there, and not only that was that Eliza was there, and I've known Martin for many years,
Eliza
but not
Kirk.
really known, not
Yes,
really
Eliza
known
Kirk.
Eliza. But I started talking to her at the party afterwards, and we've been really good friends ever since then.
Oh, lovely.
We write to each other all the time on Facebook and all sorts of stuff. And she comes to Pinewoods every year now for TradMad, and she's a really good friend now. And that all came about because of Marlboro.
Lovely.
That said, as I'm sure you know, Eliza writes to everybody all the
Oh
time.
yeah,
Does she?
but,
Yeah. Hard on
I
her
always
sleeve,
remember.
yeah.
But I remember one of the characters I met the first year I came, and this is, don't mind me telling the story, but I just remembered it. One of the characters I met the first time I came to the Marlboro Morris Ale was Newtown, was Bob Antia.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Bob Antia, the year after Kirtlington were at Marlboro, on the Saturday, Kirtlington would get ready to do something, and in walked Bob Antia at Kirtlington. And we've been friends ever since. And Bob is an incredibly generous person. And going back to that party that was in Boston for Kirtland, Bob Antia turned up that night with a case of port for everybody, which he gave to everybody because he's a collector of port. He turned up with a case of really good port to share with everybody.
A very welcome guest.
And a lovely man.
A lovely
and people again, people.
connecting. Yep.
I was going to write a book years ago, and it was going to be called Morris via the community. And that's what it's all about. The reason I started Adderbury first is because I wanted to dance a single tradition in a place and be part of the community. And it all blossoms out from that. It is a community. It just gets bigger. The community gets bigger.
Right.
And a little smaller too.
Well, yeah. But it really is. It is about community. I have got so many friends in the world purely because of Morris.
Yes.
Marlboro's part of that.
Right. Well, thank you both so much for doing this.
Thank you.
It's been lovely to talk to you both. I will eventually stop the recording right here, but I had to tell you one more story that I'm not going to leave in the recorded part of the interview. I have a story about Goathland. So and Jan, this ties into gender blending too. So here I am on Longwood Rapper, a men's rapper team, and I was allowed to join because the team didn't quite have enough people, and I was then married to Jack Jansen, who was our number one and our teacher. And I remember us standing in the living room and a bunch of us standing around, including Rhett, and we all had to reach up over our heads, and I could outreach 3 of the members on the team because I have these big long orangutan arms, and they said, okay, you're on. And it was all about stepping and trying to dance really, really well. And then Rhett Krause was our Betty and got us an invitation to the Sword Spectacular Goathland. Somebody had been planning to lead it, and something fell through at the last minute, and Goathland stepped up to lead it. It was in 1996. I was 3 months pregnant with kid number 1. And I said to myself, I am absolutely not telling any of the members of our team that I'm pregnant, because they will all of a sudden start being careful. And the last thing you want in a rapper set is everybody trying to be careful. And so we danced and danced and danced and danced. And at the end, I did tell them I'm 3 months pregnant. And of course, all of them except Jack all went, oh my gosh, okay. Because I was number 3 and I was flipping and doing all this stuff. And I said, I am absolutely fine. And this is why I didn't tell you. And they're like, oh, well, congratulations. But oh my God. But we went up to Scarborough and danced there. Scarborough. Excuse me.
We were there.
We were there.
Carry on.
Cool. And we danced in Whitby. And then in the Sunday, was it the Sunday or the Monday? I remember dancing in Beck Hole.
Yep.
And I remember dancing on an incline like this. The little Beck was down at the bottom, and we're dancing here. And who was with us? Was Stevenage? Maybe it was Stevenage. It was a rapper team from the London area. And we made up a set with like 3 Longwood people and 2 Stevenage. And it was just comical trying to get through the dance, because I forget who was, I think maybe one of the Stevenage people was calling. No, so one of our guys was calling, maybe Jack was calling as number 1. And somebody in the Stevenage set was like saying, what's that mean? And somebody was translating the figures like, oh, okay. It kind of happened. And we
guard is coaching horses. And
we hung out with Goathland on Monday. I think we stayed overnight with Les, and I don't remember his last name. Les and his wife, and they were delightful hosts, and they had this little 7-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy named Jack. And Jack and I bonded with them, and when we got home, We sent them a package. We said, what would you like to see from the US? And she said, I want to see photos of what New England fall looks like. So we got some beautiful photos, sent them. And I think we sent them Oreo cookies, something they wanted to try. So years later, I hear, oh my gosh, Gothland is coming to the ale. And I thought, oh, the Gothland Plowstocks, they're my old beloved buddies. And oh, I wonder how they're doing. And there they are in the exact same kit. And I thought, I am so glad this team just exists and goes from father to son and just kind of goes on in tradition. And there's this strapping 25, 26-year-old who's like the head of the set, and his name is Jack. And they went, oh yeah, that's this kid Jack. And I went, that's Jack. Oh my goodness. And there was this continuation of the team going on. But I'm sorry to say, I feel like Gothland did not have a good experience at the ale. Whoever was like their head spokesperson was very grumpy, because I think they had been expecting a bit more of a guide.
He's always grumpy.
Is he always grumpy? Okay.
Yeah, but
not
they were the ones who couldn't sit down.
We got here, we didn't know where we were supposed to go. Right. They probably didn't find anything at the feast. And I've always felt like Marlboro could do a better job of hosting our teams from far away and just assigning them a liaison to help you find your way around and know how things work. And so
Good
I'm
idea.
glad
Have
you
you
filled in
told
some of that, but it's
going back to you being in Scarborough, we were there, and I remember being in a pub with you guys at one point during the
first time we actually danced in a pub, and it was so tiny, and we thought, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And once we walked out of there, we went like, oh, now we get it. Now we get the idea of dancing in a little tiny set like this when that's all the room you've got. Our dancing just got tighter and cleaner. And we said, we've got to remember that and hang on to it. And we got home and we had all this space and we started to spread out. And we're like,
Yeah.
the
Jillian did
first
that to Mountain Lights too. First thing she did was put chairs around the room to back them into a tiny corner and said, right, dance here. It was perfectly appropriate.
The first Morris team I ever danced with, we had a very, very small room to practice in. And it was weird when we went out and danced in the open air because we had so much room.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And you kind of spread to fill the space, and you shift, but it was amazing.
Pat,
I remember
something.
Yeah. Is what?
Pat, did you have your finger in the air?
Oh, nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's all my stories for now.
And Emma,
well, I'll tell you one story.
4 or 5.
What? I'll tell you one story about the post Scarborough thing. I had to be in Bampton the following day on the Monday, dance in Bampton with Adderbury on the following Monday. Wow. And I drove like a bat of hell down the motorway, and Jan told me to slow down because I was driving so fast. So I remember that.
Since you brought it up, there was nearly an enormous multi-car crash. We burned a lot of rubber, and we ended up just inches from the car in front of us. It was an absolutely horrible experience. Thank you for bringing it up, Tim.
I'm a much better driver since I've been in the United States, because you try everybody. Well, I drive slower, but anyway.
Oh, wow.
Okay, well, thank you for this opportunity. I hope you can condense all of this down into something that's meaningful. And I wish you all the best of luck with everybody else. And if you do get the chance to talk to anybody in England, do.
We're going to pin down some Berkshire people and some Windsor people again when they come this spring.
Yeah. I'm not sure if anybody in Adderbury is interested or would be. I don't know who the best person in Adderbury, if there would be anybody to talk to. I don't know who the best person would be. I'd have to think about that. And if I think of somebody, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let us know. Right. So the last bit of tying this all up that we need to do is we have a release form for each of you to sign that lives with Vermont Folklife Center, who will eventually be the holder of all these materials, and it gives them official permission from you guys to make these interviews public. If you would like, we can put together transcripts and you can read them and review them first, because some people have said during their interviews, oh, you know what? Maybe we should cut that part from the interview. And we have. So you get all final say in however these get edited.
The only thing I don't necessarily is if I said something about Tony that I don't wish to be public to everybody, but I can't think of anything else.
Then ask to review and review carefully.
Yeah. We will. We'll take it.
All right. So we'll put together transcripts. We'll send them to you guys. We'll let you say, great, keep it as is, or strike the following parts. And once it's in a shape that you're happy with, then we'll have you sign the release form, and that will do it for us.
Fabulous. Hey. No rush.
Okay.
No rush.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You got a lot on your plate, you guys.
Yeah. Forward to seeing you soon. Again.
All right.
All right. Be well. Stay well.
Fabulous.
You too.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm
Bye.
gone. Bye.
Bye.